September 18, 1943. Republic Aviation Factory, Farmingdale, Long Island. 07:30 hours. Anthony Marchetti, 41, senior engine mechanic. Republic Aviation stared at the Pratt & Whitney R2800 double wasp engine on his workbench. 18 cylinders, 2,000 horsepower, the most powerful radial engine in American service. But there was a problem. P-47. Thunderbolts powered by this engine couldn't maintain performance above 27,000 feet. German fighters operated at 32,000 feet, flying above American escorts, picking off bombers at will. The turbocharger system was supposed to solve this. Compress thin air at altitude. Feed the engine. Maintain power at any height. In theory, perfect. In practice, problematic. Above 27,000 feet, turbos overheated. Lost efficiency. Engine power dropped. P-47s became sluggish just when they needed to be fast. Army Air Force engineers studied the problem. Recommended redesigning the turbocharger cooling system. Estimated completion, 8 months. Too long. Marchetti, a self-taught mechanic who'd never graduated high school but had modified car engines since age 14, saw something engineers missed. The problem wasn't the turbocharger. It was how air reached it. What Marchetti modified in his off hours, without authorization, against regulations, would increase P-47 operational ceiling by 5,000 feet. And the German pilots at 32,000 feet would suddenly find themselves hunted instead of hunting. By September 1943, Allied bombing campaigns stalled. 8th Air Force B-17s and B-24s flew deep into Germany. Flak was manageable. Fighter escorts protected them. Until altitude. Standard escort profile. P-47s accompanied bombers to 27,000 feet. Effective there. Deadly there. But when Luftwaffe Bf-109s and FW-190s climbed to 30,000 or 32,000 feet, P-47s couldn't follow effectively. Not enough power. Too sluggish. German fighter pilots learned this fast. Summer 1943, they developed high-perch tactics. Climb above escorts. Dive on bombers. Zoom back up before P-47s could react. August 1943, bomber losses averaged 8% per mission over Germany. Unsustainable rate. At that attrition, 8th Air Force would be destroyed in 6 months. Solution seemed obvious. Fighter that works at high altitude. P-38 Lightning could reach 32,000 feet, but range was limited. P-51 Mustang was coming, but not ready yet. P-47 was available. Plenty of them. Rugged, well-armed, loved by pilots. Just couldn't perform at high altitude. The R2800 engine was powerful enough. On sea-level test stands, it produced 2,000 horsepower reliably. The turbocharger theoretically could compress air sufficiently for any altitude, but combine them, and above 27,000 feet, something went wrong. Turbo temperatures spiked. Compressor efficiency dropped. Engine received less air. Power decreased. P-47 became sluggish. Army Air Force engineering teams investigated. Conclusion: turbocharger cooling inadequate. The exhaust-driven turbine spun at 21,000 RPM at high altitude. Generated tremendous heat. Cooling airflow insufficient above 27,000 feet. Proposed solution: redesign cooling ducts. Add additional baffles. Improve airflow. Engineering estimated 8 to 10 months for design, testing, implementation. Too slow. Bomber crews were dying now. Needed solution immediately. That's where Marchetti entered the story. Anthony Marchetti grew up in Brooklyn. Son of Italian immigrants. Father was mechanic. Taught young Anthony about engines. How they breathe. How air and fuel mix. How compression creates power. Marchetti never finished high school. Started working at age 15 in his father's garage. Fixed cars. Modified engines. Learned through experimentation. He discovered something important. Textbook engine theory and real-world engine behavior often differed. Textbooks gave you starting point. Real understanding came from touching engines, listening to them, feeling how they responded. By 1941, Marchetti was master mechanic. Republic Aviation hired him to work on R-2800 engines. His job, final assembly and testing. Make sure each engine met specifications before installation. Marchetti was good at it. His engines ran smoother, lasted longer. Other mechanics asked his advice. Engineers with their college degrees mostly ignored him. He was just a mechanic. September 1943, Republic received urgent request from Army Air Force. P-47 high-altitude performance problem. Could Republic help? Engineering department scheduled meetings. Formed committees. Began studying turbocharger cooling redesign. Marchetti attended one meeting. Listened to engineers discuss complex cooling duct modifications. He raised his hand. Problem's not the cooler. It's the intake. Engineers looked at him. Who was this mechanic interrupting engineering discussion? The intercooler is adequately designed, chief engineer responded. Thermal analysis confirms it. Your thermal analysis done on sea-level test stand? Marchetti asked. Yes, standard procedure. There's your problem. At altitude, air density's different. Flow characteristics change. Your intake geometry works at sea level. Doesn't work at 27,000 feet. The chief engineer frowned. Intake geometry is optimized. Aerodynamic analysis confirms it. Marchetti pushed back. Your aerodynamic analysis done in wind tunnel at sea level pressure? Of course. Then it doesn't account for real conditions at altitude. The meeting moved on. Engineers dismissed Marchetti's input. He was mechanic. They were engineers. Their calculations were correct. Problem must be elsewhere. But Marchetti couldn't let it go. He'd built too many engines, seen too many theoretical designs fail in practice. He knew the real problem was intake airflow. September 22nd. Marchetti stayed late after shift. The factory floor was empty. He had an R-2800 engine on his bench scheduled for installation next day. He examined the turbocharger intake ducting. Standard design, beautiful engineering, smooth curves, optimal geometry according to fluid dynamics calculations. But Marchetti saw something else. The intake duct made a sharp 90-degree turn just before entering the compressor. Aerodynamically smooth at sea level. But at altitude, with thinner air, that turn created turbulence, disrupted flow, reduced compressor efficiency. What if he eliminated the turn? The modification was simple. Remove the standard elbow duct, replace with straighter pipe, reduce turn angle from 90 degrees to 45 degrees. Allow air to flow more directly into turbocharger compressor. It violated Army Air Force specifications. The intake geometry was specified in detail. Any deviation required engineering approval, testing, certification. Marchetti didn't have time for that. He made the modification, used spare ducting from parts bin, fabricated a new elbow with gentler curve, installed it, documented nothing. Next morning, that engine installed in P-47D tail number 4226641. Standard pre-flight inspection. Everything appeared normal. The modified intake wasn't obvious unless you knew what to look for. The P-47 went to 56th Fighter Group. Pilot was Captain Leroy Schreiber, 23, from Michigan. Experienced pilot. 15 combat missions. He didn't know his airplane had unauthorized modification. September 29th. Mission to Emden, Germany. Schreiber's flight escorted B-17s. At 26,000 feet, they encountered Bf-109s. Standard engagement. P-47s held their own. Then German fighters climbed, headed to 31,000 feet. Standard tactic. Get above the Americans. Schreiber followed. Usually at this altitude, his P-47 felt sluggish. Not today. Today, engine kept pulling. Strong, responsive. He reached 31,000 feet easily. Continued to 32,000 feet. The Bf-109 tried to run. Schreiber stayed with him. At 2,500 feet, Schreiber closed range. Fired burst. Bf-109 went down smoking. First P-47 air-to-air victory above 32,000 feet. After landing, Schreiber reported to intelligence officer. Something's different about my plane. Engine ran perfect at 32,000 feet. Never done that before. Maintenance crews inspected the aircraft. Found Marchetti's modification. non-standard intake ducting, unauthorized alteration, technically, violation of regulations, but it worked, demonstrably. Schreiber's combat report proved it. Republic Aviation's chief engineer, Leonard Matlack, examined the modification. He understood immediately what Marchetti had done. The straighter intake reduced turbulence, improved airflow to turbocharger at altitude, increased compressor efficiency. It was elegant, simple. Exactly what engineers had been overthinking for months. Matlack called Marchetti to his office. Marchetti expected termination. He'd modified an engine without authorization, violated procedure, could have caused aircraft loss. Instead, Matlack asked one question. "Can you do this to every P-47 engine?" "Yes, sir. Takes about 90 minutes per engine. Start immediately. Modify every R2800 in inventory. Then create production drawings so new engines get this from factory." Within 2 weeks, Republic Aviation modified 200 P-47 engines. By November, 600. By December, every P-47 rolling off. Farmingdale production line had Marchetti's modification, officially designated High-Altitude Intake Optimization, informally called Marchetti's elbow by mechanics who installed it. Performance improvement: P-47 operational ceiling increased from 27,000 feet to 32,000 feet effective combat altitude. Engine power at 30,000 feet increased 14%. Turbocharger operating temperature at high altitude decreased 85 degrees Fahrenheit. Combat impact was immediate. October through December 1943, P-47s engaged German fighters at altitudes previously impossible. The German high-perch tactics stopped working. Luftwaffe pilots found American escorts waiting for them at 32,000 feet. 8th Air Force bomber loss rates dropped from 8% to 5.2%. Still heavy, but survivable. Strategic bombing campaign continued. German fighter pilot, Lieutenant Heinrich Baer, post-war interview 1952. In autumn 1943, American Thunderbolts suddenly could fight at any altitude. Our altitude advantage disappeared. We had to engage them directly. That's when losses became unbearable. Luftwaffe records show fighter losses increased 23% October through December 1943 compared to July through September, directly correlated with improved P-47 high-altitude performance. Army Air Force officially credited Marchetti, February 1944. Legion of Merit Award. Citation read, "For exceptionally meritorious conduct in the performance of outstanding services resulting in significant improvement to aircraft combat capability." Marchetti's response, recorded in Republic Aviation Newsletter, March 1944, "Just fixed what was broken." That's what mechanics do. Engineers at Republic learned something important. Theoretical calculations valuable, but practical experience equally important. After Marchetti's success, Republic instituted policy. Senior mechanics attended all engineering meetings. Their input formally documented. Several other mechanic solutions emerged, improving various aircraft systems. The lesson spread through Army Air Force. Maintenance personnel weren't just wrench turners. They understood aircraft intimately, listened to engines, noticed things engineers couldn't see in calculations. By 1945, Army Air Force maintenance input changed 47 aircraft systems, improvements that engineers alone wouldn't have discovered. Marchetti proved the value of experience over credentials. After war ended, Marchetti returned to private work, opened his own garage in Brooklyn, fixed cars, modified engines, never advertised his Air Force work. 1956, Hot Rod magazine interviewed him about engine modifications. Marchetti shared techniques, mentioned he'd worked on aircraft engines during war. Interviewer asked which aircraft. P-47s. Good planes. Just needed a little adjustment. No mention of combat impact. No mention of bomber crews saved. No mention of German fighters shot down at altitudes previously impossible. Just needed a little adjustment. Marchetti died 1977, age 75. His garage passed to his son. The Legion of Merit hung in the office. Customers sometimes asked about it. Dad fixed plane engines in the war. Did good work. That undersold it considerably. Present day, P-47. Thunderbolts in museums still carry Marchetti's modification. The straighter intake ducting. Restored aircraft use original design drawings. Those drawings include Marchetti's change. His name doesn't appear on the drawings. Engineering department designation only. But mechanics restoring P-47s know the story. They call it Marchetti's elbow. They explain to visitors how one mechanic's unauthorized modification changed air combat. Most visitors don't appreciate significance. It's just a bent pipe. Doesn't look important. But German fighter pilots at 32,000 feet in October 1943 understood its importance. Suddenly nowhere was safe. American escorts reached them anywhere. Strategic bombing effectiveness improved. German war production disrupted. Luftwaffe attrited unsustainably. Path to D-Day secured. Because one mechanic trusted his hands more than calculations, and bent a pipe differently. Sometimes massive strategic outcomes hang on tiny mechanical details. Sometimes person who sees the solution isn't person with credentials. Sometimes you just need mechanic who actually listens to engines. Anthony Marchetti listened. Fixed the problem. Didn't wait for formal approval. Took initiative. Risked his job. Changed the war. That's the real lesson. When you see solution clearly and it's right, sometimes you act first and ask permission later. Marchetti did. P-47 pilots thanked him at 32,000 feet over Germany. Good enough medal for any mechanic.